Hello, my name is Jack Kregas. I was born in the U.S., but have lived and been an Australian citizen for the past 25 years, currently residing in Brisbane. Before that, I was over 30 years in Switzerland, then moved to Maui and on to Australia. Until 6 years ago, I'd never been involved in writing. Since then, I've written 13 books in the past 6 years. They include my autobiography, a novel about euthanasia, 7 mystery thrillers, 3 books of short stories, and my latest book out now, The Vegas Transactions. The Vegas Transactions explores the personality of the mafia insiders who controlled the casinos, the mentality of returning Vietnam veterans, and 2 families joined together by circumstances all woven into the history of Las Vegas in the 70s. The latest books and all my books are available on Amazon in ebook and paperback. For more information, go to my website, www.jackkregasbooks.com. I wish to thank Australian book lovers for having me on their podcast. Thank you.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature that spans a whole range of genres to book lovers around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I'm Veronica Strachan, fantasy, memoir and picture book writer, reader, and your co-founder and host for today. And I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, which is really chilly at the moment. We've just had the winter solstice and it is freezing. It was -1 this morning.
Oh, ouch. Well, it's it's only gets better from here after the shortest day, but and I am
the longest
Darren
night, whatever
Cassidy.
you like to, look on the positive, the longest night.
Oh, yes, this is true. Yes. The night of abundant dreams, maybe we can call it.
Ah, excellent.
Or nightmares. Depends. And I am Darren Cassidy, science fiction and horror writer, and one of your co-founder and co-host of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country. And not only that, as I hit record button, Veronica, I have Cold Chisel in my head.
Why?
Yeah, singing about giving the key to the city, baby.
Right.
No, because obviously episode number 21.
Yes, indeed. We are, well, regarded, I guess, 21 is regarded as an adult in probably most countries. You'd then go, yep, okay, we're in.
Yeah, unless there's war, in which case suddenly you're an adult, a lot younger.
Yes, indeed.
But 21, key to the city. Now, I did want to do a little bit of research, and I've got to be honest and say I didn't. But do you, by chance, have any idea of where that key sort of ritual began or had its origins?
No, but I know that as a 21-year-old many years ago, I did get a key with everybody's name on it, but I already had the key to the front door. So because I was living away from home, of course, by that stage, nursing, and I'd moved out with friends. So no, don't really know.
No.
But with a quick Google, I can tell you that the presentation of the key to the city, it has some really symbolises the freedom of the recipient to enter and leave the city at will as trusted friends. So in modern times, it's, kind of ornamental, but the presentation of the key to the city is traced back to medieval times when cities were actually enclosed by walls and locked gates. So there you go.
So look, I'm only going to throw a hazard a guess out here. And so I'm assuming the key at 21 is maybe a key to life. Maybe a key to adulthood.
Well,
maybe
yes.
we've crossed that realm, like I said, from non-adult to adult, and from less responsibilities to more responsibilities.
Yeah, although I must say I was chatting with my daughter yesterday and we were saying that, being adults is fine, but sometimes adulting is really, really hard.
Well, yes, I agree.
But anyway, yeah, so by the middle of the 1800s, it was customary to give a key to the city as a direct symbol of the city's wish that a guest feel free to come and go at will. And I guess that's the thing, is that, you expect by 21 that people will come and go at will and be adults. So, yeah, there you go.
Wow. And
How's
then,
that for a nice recovery from a off-the-cuff comment?
yes, and I'm already visualising sort of in my head with my tinfoil hat on now, of course, although technically, as you probably saw through the camera feed before, it is a beanie, but underneath is a little bit of tinfoil. It's almost as if maybe moving forward, our country is currently a locked city, isn't it? And the key to the city is most likely going to be vaccination. So there we go, to bring it all through to a full circle. But nonetheless, happy 21st podcast.
Yes.
And how about we jump straight to some news?
And how about some local news first, Darren? And let's hear about some of our books. What is on the website at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. So I love doing a little bit of a spotlight on the books. I'm going to highlight a couple of the books, but there's so many on there, well over 200. And so I thought I'd do a little bit of a mixed bag of lollies today, something hopefully for a little bit for everyone. But I thought I would start with a couple of horrors, just for a bit of fun. Yeah, well, you did say it was the longest night of the year, so and what better? I mean, if we're going to tell horror stories around a campfire or wonder what that rapping is at the window, last night was probably the night, well, at least at the time of recording. So the first book I'd like to spotlight a little bit is a book titled Devouring Dark, and that's by none other than Alan Baxter. And of course, you can find this in our horror genre. And Devouring Dark reads as follows. Matt McLeod is a man plagued since childhood by a malevolent darkness that threatens to consume him. Following a lifetime spent wrestling for control over this lethal onslaught, he's learned to wield his mysterious skill to achieve an odious goal: retribution as a supernatural vigilante. When one such hit goes bad, McLeod finds himself ensnared in a multi-tentacled criminal enterprise caught between a corrupt cop and a brutal mobster. His only promise of salvation may be a bewitching young woman who shares his dark talent but has murderous designs of her own. Devouring Dark is a genre-smashing supernatural thriller that masterfully blends elements of crime and horror in an adrenaline-fueled life-or-death rollercoaster ride that's emblematic of the fiction from award-winning author Alan Baxter. So there you go, that's Devouring Dark by Alan Baxter.
And we've got a chat with him coming up in a few episodes. You had a chat with Alan, didn't you, a little while ago? And
yes, we do indeed have that coming up.
Yeah, cool.
It's going to be super fun. So, yes, it's going to be lots of talk, all good things, scary and horror on that episode. Now, the next book I'd like to spotlight a little bit, and now we have already chatted with this guest. So the book is titled Midnight in the Chapel of Love by Matthew R. Davis, who was a wonderful guest on one of the interviews just recently.
Yes.
Now, Midnight in the Chapel of Love reads as follows. Johnny Trotter has spent the last 15 years running from tragic memories of the country town where he grew up. But now that his father has died, he can run no more. Returning to Waterwitch for the funeral with his partner Sloane, Johnny must confront old resentments, his estranged best friends, a strange, veiled woman the locals call White Widow, and the mystery surrounding the fate of his first love. A morbid and reckless city girl, Jessica Zelak lived to push the limits and explore the shadows, and no one has seen her since the night she and Johnny went looking for the chapel. Rumoured to be found in the woods outside Waterwitch, mentioned in playground rhymes about local lovebirds Billy and Poppy and their killing spree in 1964, the chapel is said to be an ancient, sacred place that can only be entered by lovers, a test that can only be passed if their bond is pure and true. Before he can move on to a future with Sloane, Johnny must first face the terrible truths of his past. And if he can't bring it out in the light at last, it might just pull him and everything he loves down into the dark forever. And that is Midnight in the Chapel of Love by Matthew R. Davis.
Yeah, I'm going to say all credit to Matthew, but I'm probably not going to read that one because it's a bit scary. I don't mind a little bit of horror occasionally, some dark fantasy maybe, but I was listening to Amy Kaufman's podcast on writing, and she was talking. She had a guest, Ali Marnie, another Australian author who writes horror and thrillers, and she said that she always has to read Ellie's books with the lights on. And I thought, yeah, that's actually probably a really good way to make sure you're reading horror stories. Because, yeah, so quite often I read, last thing in bed just with a little light on, and, the shadows can be a little tricky.
Yeah, they can indeed, I think. There was nothing more fascinating than when you're a kid and you could start to, as your eyes adjust to the dark and shadows or, objects in the room can take on distinct shapes that you swear is there, and then you turn on the light and of course it's not there, but power of the imagination.
Yes. All right. Have you got another one for us?
Yes, but before I do, it occurred to me when I was reading through and having a bit of a look at About Midnight at the Chapel prior to the podcast, and I didn't even bring it up when I was chatting with Matthew. Obviously, he's a South Australian, just like myself, and he's actually had work published through a publisher here called Proxium Press, and I was actually part of Proxium Press' very first published anthology back in the day. And I remember, I think I had 4 or 5 stories, if I remember correctly, short stories as part of that anthology. Yep. And one of them was a short story about a couple and a friend who are leaving the city late at night and decide to take a shortcut through an abandoned church. But the church turns out to be a bit of a portal to, areas of nastiness. And only one disappears and the other 2 come out and lose their minds. But it just occurred to me that, of course, this is sounding a little bit like, that weird portal or that strange building somewhere in the darkness. And so, two essay writers, both published by the same publishing company, and both have a bit of a tale about entering a strange building. So, or at least searching for something. But yes, a little bit of serendipity. So,
is there much story about ghosts and spooky things in South Australia, Adelaide? Did you see what I did there? I did the Benefer. Like in the Rocks in Sydney, they actually do a ghost tour, and I think do they do one in Victoria, in Melbourne? I don't know, but what's the history over there?
Well, there's the Adelaide Adelaide Jail Ghost Tour.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's still going on, but that used to be quite popular. We have the zombie walk, I think, nowadays. But I don't know. Ghosts weren't really my jam. Yeah, ghosts don't scare me so much. But that's a whole separate conversation, though, isn't it? Yeah. When you think of the seeing, say, a loved one that's moved on, and, in the middle of the night, if they suddenly appeared at the end of your bed, the first thing you feel is fear. And I think, why would it be scary? I'd love to see some people that I've lost, but so ghosts are a little bit strange. But no, I don't know about. Obviously, we've got the very strange killings in South Australia. I think that overshadows any ghost stories when we've got the bodies in the barrel and the family and the Beaumont children and lots of strange. But that's true crime stuff. But now, to shift away from the darkness as we move beyond the shortest day and longest night. This one's a brand new edition, and you'll find this under our contemporary, and it is called Reason and Passion, and it's by a young gentleman by the name of Kade Berman. And this is actually a book of poetry. And Reason and Passion is a collection of poetry pieces crafted through a meditative and unique lens. Within this book lie writings of philosophy, perceptions of the world, and personal experience. Through these short poems, there is a hope to revivify others with a newfound love of the world, a love of language, and intentional living. And the description finishes with a very short excerpt of a poem, and it reads, "Among the hills, where the trees grow in purposeful harmony, it is clear that reason rests in the forest. Yet, through the harsh forest fire that blazes through the innocent leaves, it is clear that passion rests in the forest. Like an arcane forest at the mercy of the elements, you too shall rest in the cool shade of reason and move with passion's fire." And that is Reason and Passion by Mr. Kade Berman. Again, you can find that under our contemporary genres. So for a bit of a change of pace from the horror, and if poetry is your jam, and I know a lot of people out there love poetry, then definitely jump on to the website and take a look.
Very good.
And in celebration of our wonderful guest today for our author interview, I thought I would just give another quick little spotlight on a book called The Decision They Made by Maria P Frino.
Excellent.
And the decision they made, you can find currently under our historical fiction genre. And it is described as the following. Two sisters, Amelia and Simona Lilostra, share a secret. One so distressing to them, it is never to be revealed. What they didn't count on is a young Russian man entering their lives, a man related to Amelia's Russian lover from World War II. When TV anchor Larissa Mina meets Alexei Jubrovsky at an awards night, neither has any idea there is a secret in both of their past. Sorry, I was about to say both of their pants. That's the...
Oh.
What is this dark family secret, and why were two loving sisters torn apart? And that is the decision they made by Maria P Frino.
There you
I
go.
love a good family secret. Obviously, that's a kind of something along the lines of what we're writing at the moment, Veronica. But
Indeed.
yeah,
And look, I have to say, Darren, that it was lovely to have a chat the other day about family secrets and some edits and changes that we're doing, because it just fires up your brain in a completely different way than preparing for the podcast or, looking at the news or chatting and those kind of things. And it's just amazing how that creativity that, we spark off each other across the Zoom and, come up with probably ideas for about 1,000 other books. But, we'll try.
This comes to the territory, doesn't it?
Keep it, within the pages of this book and what's obviously going to be at least a small series. I think there's probably going to be 3 books in it. But yes, that was very nice to see that.
Yeah, it's a really good point you bring up too, and it does really fire up the imagination. And you've got a couple of works on the go. I've got a couple of works on the go. We've got that work that we're doing together. Obviously, we've got the podcast and the website and stuff. So, but regardless of your workload, sometimes the project you're working on, sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming, or to a point where you need to distance yourself a little bit sometimes, or by choice, or maybe not by choice. Maybe you find that you're just not, getting that flow that you want. And I've had that a couple of times, especially when I'm not the kind of writer that likes forcing stuff. So, but that's just my preference. Other people do amazing results pushing themselves through those sorts of blank spots. However, exactly as you just mentioned, just talking about a project and coming up with ideas again and firing that little, that coal chamber of imagination and getting the flames that extends and ignites the rest of my imagination. And it's like, okay. And it restores that sense of good fun, coming up with ideas out of the nether regions of imagination and wherever these ideas come from and where the muse lays. But yes, and so if you're stuck or feeling a little bit flat when it comes to one of your projects, have a little bit, think about a different project, or sit there and just toy with ideas for a new story. And just I think just by giving your brain that opportunity to try something brand new, or at least start to work on something brand new, it can, it's a fire that quickly spreads, and you get back on the horse in no time, as I've discovered. So yes, absolutely right. It was awesome having a chat, and well, fingers crossed it's not too far off. We've just got this one final little addition, I guess you could say, that we want to make sure it's going to work, and then hopefully the book will be out soon.
Yes. It's getting closer. It is getting closer, as is my work on my other book. I've got the sequel to The Ochre Dragon. This is called Soul Stuff, and I've got it printed out at the moment, and I'm red penning the physical copy because it's amazing how different it is to actually read it on paper. And the pile on the right is growing and the pile on the left is shrinking. So that's a good thing. You can actually see, as opposed to on digital, which I know it's good, but to see the pages getting less and less, the ones I have to do, there's something about it, which is good. I mean, I try and keep lists, and I do, I have a spreadsheet and, change the colours of things when I know I've done them, but it's not the same as watching that pile go down.
No, true. That visual reinforcement, I suppose.
Yeah, I am such a visual person. But anyway, let's have a look at some slightly more local and national news. So there's Victoria has been in a lockdown. We're out of it now, but it was really fantastic to see that there was some great support for Victorian authors and Victorian bookshops trying to, suggest to people order a book through your local bookstore in Victoria, help them keep their businesses going, and Victorian authors who had their launch day, because that is such an important day for authors and illustrators, and also for readers to know that there's new books out there. So the Australian Society of Authors, they had a list of all the books that were to be launched, so that people could have a bit of a look and see what was out there. So there's All That I Can Remember About Dean Kohler by Tanya Chandler, The Threads of Retribution by Carlos Higgy Nauman, Nancy Business by R.W.R. MacDonald, and he was involved in supporting the bookstores, I know for sure, which was good. The Call of the Rift, Crest by Jay Waller, Small Acts of Defiance by Michelle Wright, Growing Up Disabled in Australia, edited by Carly Findlay, Good Indian Daughter by Rui Lee, In My Defence, I Have No Defence by Sinead Stubbins, Where the Magic Happens. This is a little picture book by Amanda Christensen, Coral Vass and Nikki Johnson. Aged 3 to 8 years, so early years. My Princess Wears a Superhero Cape by Melissa Gisbers and illustrated by Megan Higginson. So that's a classic one, My Princess Wears a Superhero Cape. Love that. And A Pair of Pears and Orange. A pair of pears and an orange. There we go. So that's a little story about making new friends and finding creative solutions to playground problems. So there we go. So a little bit of a spotlight on some.
I could have used that back in the day.
You could have, yes.
Yeah. Well,
All right.
I think as a boy, a little boy, most of your fights are going to happen in the playground.
Very good. Yes. And yes, A Pair of Pears and an Orange could have been helpful. All right. Nicole Kelly, who is one of our Australian Book Lover authors, she's going to be speaking at Port Fairy about Lament, which you can find on the Australian Book Lovers website. And it is...
And be able to hear about soon too, because
yes,
Nicole
indeed, she's on our list.
An amazing interview, yes.
Yeah. And she's going to be speaking 141 years to the day that Ned Kelly and the boys were holed up in the Glenrowan Inn. So despite the fact that her name's Kelly, no, she's no relation. But yes, she's going to be speaking down at Port Fairy, which is excellent. And there was a really good chat with an author that I was really looking forward to, but it's an in-person, how dare they, up in Canberra at the National Library, which is fondly referred to as the National Lounge Room of Australia. So Nadi Simpson, who wrote Song of the Crocodile, which I'm pretty sure was on the short list for the Miles Franklin. She's going to be sharing insights about writing, reading and the meaning of life. So that's a good one if you are in Canberra. I don't know.
Fantastic topics.
Yep.
Writing, reading, and the meaning of life.
Exactly. But yeah, so that would be a good one to see. And I had WA Premiers Awards, so that make sure that Western Australia doesn't miss out. WA Premiers Book Awards shortlist has been announced, and they've got a shortlist for emerging writers. They've got Writing for Children. They've got the Daisy Utamora Award for Unpublished Indigenous, Junior and YA Writing, and the Western Australian Writers Fellowship. So there's some money for lots of great authors there. So there's about half a dozen in each. There's only 2 in the Daisy Utamora Award. But Emerging Writers is Father of the Lost Boys by Ewart A. Alak from Fremantle Press, which is interesting, of course. Being over there, Fathoms, The World in the Whale, Rebecca Gibbs. A Question of Colour, Paddy Lees and Adam C. Lees from Magabala Books. We Can't Say We Didn't Know, Sophie McNeil, ABC Books. The Salt Madonna, Catherine Noski. So have a look at all of those shortlists, awards, and the shortlists and the prizes. And good luck to everybody. But I hope that being on the shortlist, as we've spoken about before, encourages people to have a read. So there's a lovely one called Willy Wagtail, Tales from the Bush Mob by Helen Milroy, out by Magabala Books. And Willy Wagtail, I don't know if I've said this, but Jiri, the Wurundjeri people call Willy Wagtail in Woiwurrung language, it's Jiri. So there you go. They are such cheeky little birds, and lots of them around our place too.
I like in the Blue Mountains, is it the bell? What are they called? The bell?
The bellbird? No?
Bellbird? Yeah, they sound like a little
the
ding,
bellbird.
like a
Yep,
crystal
yep.
bell. Yeah, bing. I don't know. I can't. Sorry for that real bad bell
That's
impersonation.
all right.
But yeah, they sound really cool.
Yeah.
But my favourite, I like a good Magpie song. They've got quite a few songs in their repertoire.
Yes. Yeah, I do like the Maggies. My kids had a book about magpies, and the way the author wrote the magpie sound was waddle, giggle, gaggle, gargle, google, or something similar. And the kids, used to love saying that when we were reading it. So,
And I think that's pretty accurate because
yeah,
I know that my little pet magpies that come for a munch and say hello, they either sing or they do that. Yeah, well, I'm not going to embarrass myself, but you can see they have a different stance too when they do it. So what do they call it? Waddling?
What? Yeah. Warbling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, a good kookaburra is always good for the books as well.
Absolutely.
Except
All right.
for,
So, go on.
I was going to say, not the ibis. When I was living in Cairns, I can't remember the name of the bird now, and it sounds like a lady screaming, getting murdered. I think the nickname is the Murder Birds. And so when we first arrived there, and we were staying in Palm Cove, rented a unit there, and yeah, you'd be laying asleep or trying to sleep, and then at first you hear this horrific screaming. I thought, what's going on? I have to call the cops. What the hell's going on? But it's these birds. Okay. The name escapes me at the moment. I'll call them Murder Birds. I'm pretty sure that was slang for them, but yes. So not a fan of that one. Oh, no. I like the bird, just they got to change their tune a little bit.
There you go.
Save incorrect triple O calls.
Yes, that's scary. No, I haven't said that. I've heard that. When we were kids, we used to camp down at Balnarring, which is down on the Mornington Peninsula there. And the birds that we used to call them the careful birds, because that's exactly what they sounded like. Careful. I don't know what their names. They were some sort of wattle bird, I think, when I think about it now. Okay, one more news item is the Australian Government Office for the Arts is calling all artists, art workers and creatives. They're running a survey with where to research, and they want to hear about people's career experiences and business needs to better plan professional development and career support. And so you can have your say by the 30th of June. So if you go to this, I picked this one up on Twitter, but I think if you go to the Australian Government Office for the Arts, you'll be able to find out a link to the survey. So if you want to get involved, regardless of whether you think there needs to be, let me rephrase that, there always needs to be more money for arts, but there's always competing interests, isn't there, for lots of other things. But have your say, get in there and inform government policy about what you think, about your career experiences and business needs to better plan professional development and career support. So I thought, that might be one to have a little bit of a look at.
It's so strange, isn't it? And I look, it's obviously a rabbit hole we could go down for eternity, but look, the idea is you work hard, the government or society in general, the idea is you get rewarded for working hard and, ultimately, in a number of different ways, but, first and foremost, you're doing it for money because obviously money is how we survive and we make plans, build dreams and do all these things. However, what's the point of having money in your hand? Like, so let's say you do a good hard day's work and you come home, or a night's work, or whatever your job might be. And then let's just say you finished work for the day or night, whatever. Now let's assume for one moment in time, don't turn on TV because there's no entertainment. Don't turn on the radio, there's no music. Don't go to a library or anything, books are no longer available. All these things that we take for granted is actually, that is what is on the other side of doing the work is the pleasure gained from art. Yes. If we take away art, I think people will very quickly find themselves in a position of going, what are we working for? Because, and remember, art includes fashion, for example, and clothing. All these things are arts. So I don't know at what point did this divide come when it comes to, funding allocations or, and we've seen it, I guess, a little bit heavy-handed during the COVID responses where, arts have been hit hard, whereas to buy TV, that's open at all times. But to create content or develop your art form so that you can deliver that content. No, society doesn't need that right now.
It was just bizarre. Yeah, there was no logic. There was absolutely no logic. You're quite right.
Yes, but yes, so definitely.
All right,
good
so
cause.
that's the news for the day. Don't forget, if you're in the Emerging Writers Festival, that's going on all the time. There's lots of festival always. Clunes is doing book clubs online. Clunes Booktown, which was doing the festival, is doing book clubs online. So get in there, peeps, readers and writers alike, and do more reading, do more writing.
Yes,
okay.
And I'm going to plead guilty for just 1 second. I did do a little bit of reading just then because we are recording. Well, we are recording live. We're not going live, but so I thought, I want to find out the screaming bird. So I typed in screaming bird cans, as you would. I typed in murder bird cans. And one of the first articles, the title is "Screaming Woman?" ? Nope, it's a bird, and it might look demure, but the bush stone curlew or curlew,
yep.
Curlew, has a call that would make just about anyone's blood run cold. So that's what it was, the curlew. Yeah, I knew. But there you go. So screaming woman, no, it's deaf, but it does sound like a screaming woman. So so if you're bored, readers and listeners, jump on and this article. And I'm sure on any article on it, we'll probably have something similar. There is a button you can hit so you can listen to the call.
Nice one.
Yeah,
I forgot I had one more.
Screaming
to your life.
Let's take us away from screaming and go back to children's books for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Readings, which is Australia's own, bookstore since 1969, they bring out the top 10 bestsellers, etc. And really good news is that in their children's and YA top 10 bestsellers of the week, the top 3 were in fact Australian authors. So there was
magic.
Really good. So Welcome to Consent by Yumi Steins and Dr. Melissa Kang. Which is a guide, as you can imagine, to consent for young people.
Doesn't involve milkshakes, does it?
Oh my God, let's not get into that. I have heard that it is so much better.
I would think so.
Yeah, as I said, Darren, let's stop now. There's the gorgeously illustrated and fact-filled The Book of Australian Trees. And that is by Inga Simpson and Alicia Rogerson. And there's a vivid Roman time slip adventure, The Boy Who Stepped Through Time by Anna Sidor, Ciddor. So, Australian authors are getting in there. They are writing, they're publishing, they're co-authoring, they're marketing, they're winning prizes, they're getting out there so that there are more books for people to read. So, yeah, fantastic. And
I like the idea of that tree book.
Yes.
Someone who loves bushwalking, and I realised that I've never got off my bottom and learnt like names of, all the natural fauna around me. I know a couple, but so it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit about our environment, and then you get a little bit more of a connection when you walk because you go, oh, that's a such and such tree, and and then you probably, obviously, if you learn the name, then you learn a little bit about the tree as well. So that sounds like a really cool book.
Yes. Yeah, it says that the book is a love song to Australian trees, from the red ironbark to the grey gum, the Moreton Bay fig to the Queensland bottle tree. So and a little bit educational. It talks about those kind of bits and pieces. So that's a good one for kids, which is lovely. Yeah, learning a little more is a good thing, so that you feel past the surface is what I like to say to people.
Learn a bit every day, definitely. But I know they did a study in, I can't remember the location, it was somewhere in Japan, for the people that lived the longest, or one of the communities that had a mean survival age of one of the longest sort of living societies. Mm-hmm. And it was that they had a purpose each day. Mm-hmm. They either were working on projects or maintained employment or maintained a role that required their attention each day. So, and I think that's one of the big things, isn't it? And learning, if you embark on a learning adventure, then each day you have a task ahead of you.
Yeah.
And therefore there's a reason to get up and it keeps your mind sharp. And learning's, I mean, it's going to let you live not forever, but close to.
Yes.
In theory.
Which is, I'm just thinking, such a beautiful segue into one of the quotes I've got today. But that's okay. We will wait until after your fabulous interview with Maria P Frino.
Yes, it was just such a beautiful time talking with Maria. And as you'll hear in the interview, we actually had quite a couple of things in common. Growing up with a corner deli and having a school across the road. And, it was such a cool conversation, and it covered quite a lot of ground, from, the repercussions that can happen from wartime events and how the effect on lives and the way it can ripple through our lives and families, and through to, film and television industry and sheds, and whether a clean shed's good or isn't. But yeah, the corner deli. And it did draw me back to the area where I grew up originally. And it was a very mixed as far as people from all different countries lived in that area. And there was a lot of Greeks and a lot of Italians. And so growing up, as a little take, a lot of my friends were Greek or Italian, or they could have been Vietnamese or I had some Chinese. But it was such a rich environment for me when I was a kid, 5, 6, 7. Because if when you're little and you go to play at somebody else's house, there's always different foods and different music and different languages, different accents, and it was such a rich environment. And talking to Maria, she could have been one of my friends back in those days, back when I was little. Do you know what I mean? It was, and it made me think. We really are. I mean, it's a cliche. We're obviously a country of migrants, ultimately.
Yep.
But yeah, we were discussing about this a little bit before the recording. But the idea that it's easy to develop a concept of your own environment, but the ability to reading and reading other people's works is such a great way to see that exact same environment through somebody else's eyes, and they're looking at the exact same environment, but they're bringing a whole different experience, and therefore a whole different interpretation to a lot of what they're seeing. So, for example, with the shop on the Princess Highway that Maria was talking about, and how she was watching the world go by when she was young, wanting to be a part of the Aussie kids, I suppose, that were off to play their sport on the weekends and stuff, whereas she was helping her family in the deli. So there's that intersection of two cultures, two ways of life. There's me saying, I remember going into the deli either during sport, after school, and so there's the exact same deli, but then Maria's perception, or not perception, but her vision of that same location is from behind the counter, and envious of maybe the freedom some of the kids she sees coming in, and so there's all these different. It's such a unique opportunity, I think, when you get to talk to someone like Maria and you get to read books that reflect upon growing up in those sorts of cultural melting pot, and especially the opportunity for me to look back and reflect on just all that wonderful culture that I was exposed to back then, but then now as an adult being able to go back and rediscover that through the eyes and sometimes the voices of other migrants that are now coming to tell the tale. So yeah, but otherwise it's just such a fantastic time to talk with her.
Beautiful. All right, bring it on.
Okay, let us begin. And without further ado, here is Maria. Well, hello, author, marketer, and web content manager, Maria Frino. I am so happy you have chosen to be a part of the Australian Book Lovers podcast. And the first thing I have to ask is, how are you?
Hi, Darren. Nice to be here. Thank you so much. Very well, thank you.
Excellent. And we were just obviously talking a little bit off air, and weather seems to be a little bit of a hot topic on our podcast. So you are in New South Wales, and I know you're getting a bit of rain. So hopefully it's nothing too dramatic and just enough to wet the garden and maybe give the kids a chance to boogie board down the street.
Yeah, yeah, we've got a little bit of flooding down the road. Yeah. So,
yeah.
We could do with a bit of sunshine now.
Well, we've got plenty to spare here at the moment, but could change later today. So, but no, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. There's so much I want to have a chat with you about, and to be honest, I'm just going to jump straight in because and I think it's an important point or a point and place to jump from. So, one of the books that you were so kind to list on our website is a book titled The Decisions They Made. Now, for our listeners out there, the general synopsis is that two sisters, Amelia and Simona Lilostra, share a secret, one so distressing to them it is never to be revealed. What they didn't count on is a young Russian man entering their lives, a man related to Amelia's Russian lover from World War II. Now, it's described as a compelling family saga spanning 3 generations and 3 countries, full of dark secrets, flawed love, and a decision no one was supposed to discover. Now, the important part that I wanted to get to was that you have made I guess you make it clear on your website, and that 50% of all proceeds of the sale of the book will be donated to the Alana and Madeline Foundation. So, Maria, I'm wondering if we can open up this conversation by perhaps illuminating our listeners and letting me know, what is the Madeline Foundation and what role do they play in your life, and what are they striving to achieve in society and in your local community?
Right. For people who haven't read the book, there is elements of child abuse in the book. The 2 sisters are abused by their father. The Alana and Madeline Foundation came to be a charity when Port Arthur happened.
Okay.
Where this poor man lost his 2 girls and his wife in the shootout. So he decided to start this charity because apparently the shooter was abused as a child. And, the horrific events that we've all heard about happened.
Mm.
So he decided to start the Alana and Madeline Foundation, the names of his 2 girls, to help abused children. And I just thought this tied in extremely well with my book. They accepted it straight away. They said, yes, that would be lovely. However, just on the sales note for a minute, because of good old COVID, the sales haven't been as great as I expected. But I do hope that this year things pick up and I can give them a decent amount of money.
I hope a lot of people are going to jump on board and grab a copy and have a read, because it does sound like it's an important story. So how long has that story been a part of your life, and at what point did you decide that it was going to be a book? Like, is it a story that's been with you, since you were a kid, or is it somewhat based on family events, or is it just something that you came up with? But how long has it been a part of your life?
A long time.
A long time?
Yes, I was 27 when I wrote the original story, and then only picked it up about 5 years ago. What
triggered you to sit down and actually write the story? Like, how long was it something that had been simmering in your imagination, in your mind for a long time, or was it sort of a bolt of lightning and you thought, right, I'm going to write it, and bang, it came out?
I wish it was a bolt of lightning. No, it was a clean up, and I found the manuscript. And I wasn't seriously thinking of being an author. I've always had writing in my career, and as a web content manager, there's always a lot of writing in that. So, but however, writing a novel and professional writing are 2 very different things. So when I picked it up, I reread it and thought, oh my God, this is terrible. So I started to think about, had more chats with my parents about what brought them to Australia, because essentially the background of it is a migrant story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
which is really, in essence, pretty much Australia's story, isn't it? And I think that's why it's so important.
Oh, well, yes. I mean, in the 50s, a lot of Italians, especially Southern Italians, came to Australia. I'm lucky enough to have been born here, but still have quite strong connections with my cousins back in Southern Italy.
Mm-hmm.
The front cover of the book, the archway, is actually part of the town. It's the one entrance to the town where my parents were born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a lovely little town high in the mountains behind the Amalfi Coast. So beautiful part of the world, lots of trout fishing, but very sleepy. Like, I don't know, I think there's less than 1,000 people who live there now. So that, and also the basement is actually real. And some of the characters are based on real people, but the story itself is totally fictional.
Glad you mentioned characters, because I did have a bit of a read of one of your blogs, and in one of your blogs you mentioned that you love seeing characters come to life, in reference to when you're writing and motivations for penning a story. So that was one question. And look, I guess it's going to depend on the book, because we're obviously going to talk about more than one story. But in general, your characters, do they have a little basis on real life as a general rule? Or are they, for example, living, breathing births of your imagination?
No, I tend to write from a real story side of things, except in the another genre we're going to talk about later.
Absolutely, yes.
But when it comes to family fiction, I have a lot to draw from. Coming from a fairly large extended Italian family, there are a lot of stories. And then I married into another Southern Italian family.
So lots of Christmas presents.
Yes, and my husband's side is even more extended than mine. So, the stories are just amazing. And my husband's parents, my father-in-law was in the war. I actually didn't meet him. He passed away before I met my husband. But the stories I hear from that side of the family are even more horrific than the ones I heard from my own. Things in the 30s and 40s were unbelievably cruel. And it amazes me that these people actually survived and can live a fairly normal life. Obviously, there are the few, like the girl's father, that can't come back to real life because of what's happened in their own past. And I think that's a very cruel part of human beings, what some humans can do to others and ruin their lives for the rest of their lives.
You're absolutely right. And look, we were talking a little bit before recording about, World War II, but the problems of people that are involved in the war and the effect it can have, that, and it can echo throughout their lives, and not just their lives, the survivors, but the lives that they have an influence on too. And so, it's that one moment in time in a war can really destroy or motivate, depending on which way the energy runs. But nonetheless, it can have an influence that can extend for generations, realistically.
Well, it's all the displacement as well. How many people escaped Europe at that time and changed their whole lives? Yes.
And so my father's side, as I mentioned, is Russian, Polish, bit of a mix. But when I was a little kid, every time I went to my father's parents or my grandmother, I didn't know my real grandfather, it was always funny because they had this dining room table and it was massive and even more massive when you're a kid, always full of food, like as in every dish you can think of. And the room was absolutely wall to wall of flowers, plastic flowers. But so it was like a banquet, but there was no one ever there. Even if we just popped in by accident, it was just always full of food. And it wasn't until a very brief discussion chatting with my grandmother that when she told me a little bit about her experiences in a concentration camp and before she was managed to escape, and what she saw her friends and family have to go through, and basically her country go through as well. And then that table with all the food made complete sense. And it's imprinted in my mind. So, and I think it's important, I think what you're doing is important with regards to keeping those tales alive, good or bad, whatever emotions that the tales cover. I think it's important that, like you said, that there was so much displacement and challenges, and so many stories ultimately from people from that era and that escaped from the war. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're writing about it.
Yeah, and we don't have that the Jewish background where they were treated horrendously.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting that you mentioned the table full of food. There are many times throughout the book where they're eating. Being set in Italy. It's set in Rome, so they have lots of coffee and food.
Well, look, I've never been to Italy, but I've always imagined it as a place where you're either conversing with wine, food, and laughing, or having a snooze. That's
Yes, yes, the afternoon snooze between after lunch till 3 o'clock. Yes.
That does sound like an awesome lifestyle. Now, so obviously the decisions they made touches on some very dramatic and very thought-invoking themes. But I also understand, Maria, you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's just been released, but you have worked on a science fiction trilogy called the Xenia Station, which I understand is a Billion Light Years trilogy. And now I've got, you'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce the names, but I'll just read a quick synopsis for our audience out there. Xenia Station, a Billion Light Years trilogy. Dawa and Zenek, have I pronounced that right?
Dawa.
Dawa. I was thinking it would be like Jawa from Star Wars, but
Yes.
whatever I think it is, then my brain says no, the opposite will be the correct one. So Dawa and Zenek want to escape from the enforcers. They have 300 followers who want to do the same. Why do they need to do this? And who are the enforcers? This is a thrilling sci-fi short story of a power couple wanting to keep humanity safe. Can they achieve this? Now, it's a big jump from a multi-generational post-World War II story involving love and family secrets to a science fiction genre. So I'm just, I guess my very first question regarding to this situation is, how do you juggle two different styles of storytelling? And are there other genres that you're thinking of tackling, or is this these are your two loves?
They're both based on families. So I guess that's the link.
Okay, so that's the common thread, yep.
Yeah, there is a common thread there. Science fiction, I'm a science fiction buff. Give me Star Wars, give me Star Trek. I just love it.
You didn't even mention Buck Rogers. That's kind of the disco version of Star Wars.
Yes. I really enjoy the escapism and the imagination. Star Wars, the characters in Star Wars are just brilliant. I must say I haven't followed what Disney is doing to it, but the original Star Wars, I was actually at a premiere. I was working for a television station at the time, and we had a premiere for it. I had no idea what it was about, and it wasn't until years later that it came to behemoth that it is.
So you actually saw the original Star Wars blind without any of the pre-hype or
no? There was no hype. There was nothing. It was just the local TV.
Oh, that's incredible! Doing
a little promo at the local cinema for our viewers. So it was great, and it's a great memory that I have. So this Xenia Station came to me in the early 2000s. With the change from 1999 to 2000 and all.
Yes, the end of the world. Yeah,
the end of the world stuff, and computers were going to go all over the place. But anyway, so I did a little synopsis, and again picked it up around the same time that I picked up the decision they made. And when I finished the decision they made, I decided to put 2 short stories up. Now, one is called The Studio, and that's a very short story. It's a little crime story that is just basically there, and I give it away for free quite often. Then I put up Xenia Station, A Billion Light Years, which is still a short story, but a bit longer than The Studio. So they were there to fill up my Amazon page and start to get people to read my work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just in the last 2 days, Xenia Station, it got to number 17.
Oh, that's awesome.
For YA readers and teens. So, yeah, I'm quite chuffed about that.
Is that a specific demographic that you were targeting when you wrote?
Yes. I try to make my books for all readers, but this one in particular, because there are twins in the story that get kidnapped, it is a YA novel, although adults can still read it, of course. And I've kept it fairly character-driven in that Dawa and Zenek are the power couple, and then there's another character who comes in book 2 and book 3. So Xenia Station trilogy will be out in a couple of months. I haven't quite got the edits back yet. So I'm just waiting on my beta readers to come back to me.
Okay, so the current rendition of Xenia Station, the short story, Is that so? You've actually got a trilogy of like novels based on the short story, or there's going to be 3 extended short stories, or what's the format?
So book 1 is a short story.
Mm-hmm.
Book 2 and 3 are novels, and
Oh, excellent. Okay, yep.
they're coming out as one edition. That's Xenia Station trilogy.
Oh, fantastic. So it's all done, just getting the beta readers and a little bit of editing.
Yes, just
Wonderful.
finalising a few things.
Must be pretty excited then.
Oh, it is. And the other genre that I write in, I know you're not supposed to write in different genres, but
Who says that?
that's one of the author rules.
Oh, I don't believe in that.
Is contemporary fiction. So I have another book coming out after the trilogy.
Okay.
Called Two Men in a Shed.
Oh, okay. That's you've pricked my ears. Yes. Now that of course already I'm a horror and thriller man, so I'm thinking 2 Men in a Shed. Only one's going to leave, but no. What's the premise for your 2 Men in a Shed?
No, you're totally wrong there. It's about these 2 men who form a friendship in a men's shed in Kilcare. Kilcare is a little country town in Central Coast, New South Wales.
Mm-hmm.
And I go there often with my girlfriends. We love it. So the idea of this came from my 2 lovely bosses. The company I work for do lawn and garden equipment, and 2 brothers ran the business. Unfortunately, one of them has passed away. Now, John is in his 80s and still running the business, which I find absolutely amazing. So it got me thinking about men and their relationships and how hard it is for men to make friends. And I went to look at a lovely men's shed in Hunters Hill here in Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
And it is beautiful. It's a lovely little sandstone building, and the men in there are all probably 60 plus, and they make the most beautiful things. The neatest, tidiest place I've ever seen. Because my father had a shed, my uncles had sheds, and they were always a mess. It was always chicken manure everywhere, and it was always, tools falling off.
Well, you step through the shed doors and rules are out the window, and that includes cleaning rules.
So this was quite lovely. So that gave me the idea of where they meet. Now the secret that's one of them knows, the other one doesn't, is that they were both married to the same woman.
Oh wow!
So
it's very intriguing.
The woman that actually takes the story along and how it affects their friendship. Yeah, that one's coming back from the editor as well.
It's funny. Look, I'm far from your typical male mechanic and running around and shed. Although I have got a shed and I cut and polish opals and stuff in there, but I wouldn't say it's full of tools. But I think I don't think it's just for men or ladies, but I think there's something about a shed where it's a room. And this is just my personal interpretation, but when you walk into someone's shed or any shed, it feels to me as though the one thing is the rules go out the window, but it's all possibilities are on the table. Whatever you want to do or try, whether you succeed or fail, this is where you can do it. You want to try banging 2 things together, do it. If it breaks, doesn't matter. It just falls on the floor. Whereas obviously in a house, there's restrictions in the sense of you don't want to stain carpet, you don't want to crack tiles, and you don't want to get grease, and you don't want sparks flying onto the curtains and all sorts. So yeah, I love the idea that a shed is just like this, like a portal of possibilities, and you can get in there and just get dirty, get your hands dirty, and whatever you can imagine, give it a try. So I love it. So I think that's a really beautiful setting for your story.
All the stories have some sort of beach or lake, or there's some sort of water in them. They're all connected in some way. This one, 2 Men in a Shed, they're not related, but it's still got a family feel.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you always keep a water theme. Is it something that you do consciously in the sense of it's a symbol that you like to incorporate in your writing, or is it just a passion, a love that just beautifies, or it is something that you always use for aesthetic, or what's the importance behind the water?
2 things. I was born on the South Coast, so I grew up at the beach. You know, Saturdays and Sundays were spent with my friends body surfing. I wasn't a surfer, but watching the surfers, and it was a great upbringing. And the other reason is I love exploring how to talk about water and waves and sand.
Wow, that is very interesting. Yes, and
I mean, I'm a bit of a nature freak too, so.
That's really interesting point. Obviously, or not obviously, but I can't be too far from the beach for too long. I mean, I love outback and love adventures, you know, mountains or whatever, but I live on the beach and I just couldn't be far from, I have to be near the water as a general living thing. So you would very well know, and anybody who lives on a beach knows that the characteristics, the atmosphere of the beach change every day. You never know it's like having this enormous, absolutely monumental art piece at the end of the street, or you know, that you can walk to, that is changed every day, and it's never the same. One day it can be, you know, beautiful and sunny, and there's people everywhere and surfing. Then another day it could be cold and windy and rainy, and there's nothing but a couple of very brave seagulls pecking through the seaweed. But the amount of characteristics that the water can take and the beach can take is unlimited. So you've raised a really interesting point, because it's not something I've written a lot about, as in the water. And you're right, it would be really good exercise to try and describe all those characteristics of water. Well, how have you found your attempts at doing it? Has it increased your appreciation of the beach and lakes and rivers, or is it a good challenge? Or
It has. Incidentally, I'm looking at the Parramatta River as I speak to you.
Beautiful.
We're enough to have a house that has a lovely view of it. So that inspires me as well. I have a healthy regard for the surf, and I learned to swim in it.
It definitely reminds you of who has the power, that's for sure.
Oh, yes. I know what a rip looks like. I love walking along the rocks and you know, picking up shells. Every beach I've been to, I'm always wary. You never know what's there.
Yes,
So,
yeah, you have to have a healthy respect.
exactly. And I think in Australia, we're very blessed with all the beautiful beaches we have, but we need to be very careful. I've swum overseas, and, you know, they say that their water is safer, and it can be, yes, but it doesn't have the impact that Australian beaches do.
No, and I think, you know, for people that don't spend a lot of time in the water, or maybe, you know, once every couple of months or a couple of times in summer, they'll usually go on water when it's good weather and whatnot. But, you know, spend enough time, there's especially surfing, body surfing, or if you spend a lot of time in water, one thing that is absolutely fascinating, I think, is it can be, say, for example, a beautiful day, you're on your surfboard and a rogue wave can come through, and it can be pure terror out of nowhere. You know, there's this massive wall of water coming. It's about to explode on top of you. There's nowhere for you. You can't just turn and run. And, you know, it can be terrifying, and you can be held down. You can't breathe, and it's just panic. And then when you pop up, that wave's gone, and suddenly it's the most beautiful, calm ocean you've seen. So it's like a monster out of your imagination came, shook you, and disappeared.
Yes, and makes you realise, oh, wow, as amazing as that was, I don't want to go through it again.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, because it's so beautiful, you think, oh, well, I'll stay out a bit longer, even though you were just contemplating your own mortality. Yeah, no, I think it's, and look, let's not even mention the sharks that are probably hovering around.
Well, not this year, but the year before, when we were in Kilcare, we were there on the last morning, and we went for a walk along the beach, and there was a pod of dolphins.
Oh, spectacular.
That was just amazing. And they were pretty close. And some of the locals said, oh, yeah, they come in every now and then when there's no sharks. And I said, what? We've been swimming in this beach for the last 3 days. Yeah, when there's no dolphins, there's sharks.
Well, having been lucky enough to have surfed and swum with many a dolphin, the one thing remains true, and that is when something that big pops up out of nowhere to say hello, regardless, there's a split moment in time where you have no idea if it's a dolphin or a shark, and it's a very unique feeling that shudders along your spine. And then there's a huge sense of relief when you realise it's Echo the dolphin sitting there staring at you. But they're big creatures, and you know, when you're out in the water and you don't really see anything, and then suddenly something potentially bigger than you suddenly pops up, it can be quite daunting at first, but it is really awesome swimming with dolphins. Absolutely. So yeah, that's cool. You've actually inspired me a little bit. I might, because I'm going to be working on some short fiction soon, like flash fiction and whatnot, just to try and sharpen my pencil, so to speak. But and you brought up a really interesting point to try and find a myriad of ways to describe water. But now I also see another short story that's on your website is a short story called The Studio, which you briefly mentioned earlier. And now, obviously, you said it was a bit of a crime one. Let's have a look. I've got here, it is a crime short story with a synopsis that says, Raymond is accused of a crime he could never commit. To prove his innocence, he'll have to betray his friend. Does he understand the consequences of his actions? Now, you did mention you worked in television, and the artwork for The Studio is quite compelling, because I love a good film reel. So my lounge room is actually, at the moment, somewhat littered with 8mm film reels, because I'm a bit of a hobby projectionist, and I was lucky enough to purchase a lot of awesome stuff from a very big collector in Melbourne. So the other day I was just screening The Wizard of Oz, and I've got Alien and all sorts of stuff. So I love the big, and I've got one of the original 400-foot Star Wars and a 600-foot Empire Strikes Back, which is so cool, projecting with the the flickering noise. And
fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, but and you know, I've done a little bit of work in film and television, but obviously you've worked for a television station. So I was just curious, was there a love of that medium, that you know, of film and television before you worked for the TV station? And, you know, is that what drew you to that role? And also, I have to ask, was your job one of the inspirations for the story called The Studio?
Interesting question. The Studio was a story I wrote many, many years ago. I've met a couple of people who have Asperger's, or what is now called high functioning autism. So Raymond has high functioning autism, and his particular interest is old, as you just mentioned, old film equipment.
Oh wow! So I was right when I saw the cover. Yeah.
And he collects it, and he ends up having to move into this house because he has so much of it. And he's told by the owner that he's not allowed in. Well, he's allowed to go in this room, but he's not allowed to touch any of the videos or anything. So Raymond is in there just fixing the old equipment. He's happy, doesn't care about anything else. And then he gets accused of voyeurism and filming people in a particular room, in a room adjacent to this studio. And then he comes out and tells his friends, oh, that's not my room. That's Georgie's room. I don't touch it. Anyway, so it ensues that there's an investigation, and is it Raymond or is it not? So, but I started in television when I was 18. It was basically a little secretarial role that developed into PR makeup production.
Oh, okay. It's a big jump. Yeah. Well, as in like one of those things is not like the other, makeup front. Yeah, so yeah. Quite a transition.
You know, I mean, the PR kind of went with the makeup, but then the production, of course, came from the makeup. I was there for about 4 or 5 years, local station down the coast, and then moved up to the Big Smoke, and the rest is history, as they say. But I've always been a film and television buff anyway, you know, right back when we still had black and white.
I think we've all been lucky to see the transition, you know, for example, in technology, you know, since I've been born. But I do wish I could have been there for that transition from colour to black and white, because I think that would have been pretty profound.
It was awesome.
I bet it was, yeah.
Yeah. I remember the little black and white that we had up in the corner in the shop, because I grew up in a shop, another migrant story. And then, you know, we moved into this house after my parents sold their shop, and we were just so lucky. It was right in the transition when we were moving into colour, and, you know, Mum and Dad came home with this colour TV. I was like, wow.
Paradise, the future.
So, yeah, it was great. you know, trying to tell my kids or any of the kids these days that, you know, we had no colour and there was no 4H or whatever, you know, the latest quality is.
8K definition and
yeah, all of that. Yeah, they just can't fathom it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And no remotes either. You had to get up and turn the TV off.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think until the age of, say, probably 12 or 13, in my at least I'm speaking for my generation, we were the remote. It was a clip across the ear and change the channel, put it on channel. So, okay. So I know what it's like to be a remote control.
Yeah, and that was in the day when, you know, the parents dictated what we were watching.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, absolutely. But I am very interested because you did mention there was a part of your childhood where you grew up in a shop. Now, you have another story called The Shop, and which is about a brother and sister during the 50s and 60s. And I guess, you know, obviously the question is it somewhat autobiographical? But also, you know, I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, and the corner deli was kind of a feature, or the corner shop or the shop. You know, you had your fish and chip shop or you had your deli. And I think they tell me, I can't remember, but, you know, it was called a milk bar in Melbourne. I don't know what it's called in Sydney, but they're very few and far between now because I think your service station has taken that role over. That's where you go get your pie or your sandwich. But please note, listeners, I would never buy a sandwich in a service station. But anyway, maybe a pie if I'm really hungry and it's a long drive. They're just very rare to see. And so is that the same? You know, it's been a while since I've been to Sydney, but I would hazard a guess that it's pretty similar there. I mean, obviously we've got lots of cafes, but cafes don't have this. They're not a shop. They're obviously a completely different beast. So what sort of memories do you have of the shop? And was it a beautiful thing to write the story and reminisce, or assuming it's autobiographical, because that's still, hopefully you can eliminate there.
It is a little bit. It's fictional. We didn't get to play Saturday sport. It's called The Shop on the Princess Highway. Now, the Princess Highway takes you straight down the coast down to Victoria. It's quite a long stretch of road, and we would get a lot of truckies stopping and getting their bacon and egg rolls. And so the shop was a sandwich bar, as well as a deli, as well as a little convenience store, as they're called these days.
That's exactly what I imagine when I think of a deli. Yeah.
And Mum couldn't speak English. Dad had done a year of English school, and he'd worked in the steelworks. And he just got so sick of, one, being dirty, two, working 3 shifts and never seeing his kids. So they decided to sell their home and hock everything and go into this little shop, which ended up being a boom, by the way. They made a lot of money out of it in the 60s. It was all cash money back then and no large shopping centres to take your business.
No, that's right. And I'm just curious, when you said they sold up and took that gamble, I remember a lot of the shops that I used to go to, and even like some of the kids I used to play with whose parents owned a deli or whatnot, usually it was like they lived there as well. It was like a residential living with a shop front. Is that the case in this, or at least your experience when your parents had the shop?
Yes, we had a dingy little flat upstairs, and the toilet was always breaking down, and it was hideous. It was hideous.
The good memories.
After coming from a lovely, red bricked home with a lovely backyard and place to run around into this little, I hated it at the time. But the shop gave us a very good living, and my parents are still, very healthy and living into their twilight years. And I have good memories now, although growing up at the time I wasn't. I was very jealous of the Australian lifestyle of being able to go to the beach on a weekend and going to play tennis or soccer or football on the weekends with your parents watching. And, my parents worked 7 days a week, 12, 13, 15-hour days sometimes. And we were there to help. So, it's a very migrant story. And I know a lot of kids who grew up in a similar way. And even if their parents didn't have a shop, they still had to help their parents with cleaning the household or taking mum to the shops or you know, there was a lot that migrant kids had to do to help their parents back then.
Yeah, and definitely, you know, when I was a little tacker growing up and going to school, it was a lot of my friends, you know, parents were either Greek or Italian, and most didn't speak English. So the children were sort of like the first English-speaking generation. And it even impressed on me back then, you know, when I was probably 6, 7, that, you know, the kids, a lot of my friends had that, you know, on one hand, though, you know, we were playing dinosaurs and doing all that sort of stuff, but then they would also quickly switch hats and become an interpreter and, you know, and be almost a liaison officer from their parents, you know, the lifestyle that they knew and the lifestyle they had now were trying to adapt to. And, you know, it was even back then there was like I was very respectful of that, because a lot of the kids had big responsibilities, and you know, because the parents were working hard, and you know, obviously in a new country with all these different, you know, new ways of living and new ways of talking and all sorts, and the kids obviously were no problems because they grew up in it. But so it's very but you're right that a lot of people had shops, and if you could stand up and walk, then you would be helping out, wouldn't you be?
That's right. There was no sleeping in on a Saturday.
No.
And our school was right across the road. So we crossed the road every morning to go to school. And then my brother and I were allowed to leave the class at 5 minutes before lunch to go to the shop so we could sell lollies and sandwiches or whatever to the kids. They
wow.
all walk across the road, no supervision, across this busy highway. It was just very different times. I
just can't believe you said that, because as you're saying that, I'm going back in the old caverns of my memory. But the kind of where I grew up as a little tacker, which until the age of 9 or 10, and then it was all spiraled out of control after that. But up until then, exactly the scenario you mentioned. So we lived in a house diagonally across the road was the primary school that I attended, but directly across from us was a house with a deli front. And at recess and lunch, you know, kids would cross over and go in there. And I'm pretty sure it was a lovely old Greek lady, if I remember correctly. And, you know, had all the lollies there, and you could get, you know, these were 1 cent, these are 2 cents, and get your bag and then go back across the road. So, how's that? Very, very similar memories. I think we've both got one little thing in common, and the deli and the school across the road.
And you like Star Wars.
And we like Star Wars. Oh, and we both happen to write. Yes. I do love my Star Wars. But I am excited because the original Battlestar Galactica is on one of the streaming services, and that was a show I used to love when I was a kid. Yeah. And it's still a good show. I did have a DVD set a couple of years ago and used to put it on the background while I was working. And I loved it. And I think it was like one of the first, I don't know, I was never a big Star Trek, but only because I never really managed to catch it on TV back in the day. But when I was watching the Battlestar Galactica, I realized that at all times in the background was the sound, the machine sounds of the ship. It was like a constant hum, constant drone. I thought, that's cool, because it really made you feel like you're on the ship. So I don't know if any other sci-fi did that, but who knows. But yes, Star Wars, sci-fi, love it all. But I'm wondering, so you cross so many genres, and you've got the trilogy coming back. You've got, you know, the other short story coming back. What do you have planned for the rest of 2021 when it comes to writing? Is there a completely different genre you might be tackling, or are you going to revisit some themes? What sort of spectacular missions have you got in place?
I'm actually playing around because I've got 2 books coming out this year. I'm not in a mad rush to write another one, but I do have a little synopsis of going back to my television days, a story based on 2 women who work in television, and it's still pretty rough at the moment, and that won't be out until next year or maybe the year after. So there's that one, and then there's a couple of others that I'm still playing around with. I'm part of a writers group, and we get ideas. We throw ideas at each other and see if they stick. So there's a few things in the pipeline. I think I will keep writing well into my retirement, and just because I can. It's there. And as I said, I might have mentioned earlier, I do it because I love it. And if there's a monetary reward at the end of it, that's great. But if not, and I really appreciate people like yourselves that have these wonderful marketing websites that we can put up our work. Because even as a self-publisher, it costs quite a lot of money to publish a book.
The cold stark reality is it does, or it can. Obviously, there's, depending on which way you want to approach it, it's going to depend on the sort of outlay. But ultimately, speaking of writing or film and television, I think the one thing is similar in the sense of you develop an idea, you decide you want to do it, you write it, and then if you want to put it out to market, then essentially you become your own business. A movie is just exactly the same thing. Someone writes the script, then they decide, then they get together people that are willing to invest in the gamble, which ultimately it's always a gamble, and they develop a company for that one particular movie. They put the money, they film it, they allocate funds for marketing, etc., and they hope to get a return. I think if you're a self-published author, is such for me, I think it's like a really awesome and very thrilling ride, because basically becoming your own company, and you have to learn how to market your own product, and there's so much out there to learn. So the cool thing is, if it doesn't happen in the first 6 months, if it doesn't happen in the 12 months, that's not to say that it's not going to work, because a lot of things take a little bit of time to catch fire, so to speak. And, in that 6 months, 12-month period, just using that as a rough, figure, who knows what you can learn as far as if you are looking into developing yourself as a company and say, okay, well, I'm an author. How do I, and writing is a huge thing, and that comes with all the skills that you need to pick up and all the elements of the craft that you can improve on, and all the tools that you can discover and embark upon learning. But then there's also the marketing, so the selling of the book. So yeah, definitely two huge pieces of the pie that come both with challenges, but I think they're super exciting. And that absolutely is one of the big, huge inspirations for developing the website, because there's a lot of books out there, but there's so many awesome Australian authors, and, why not put it in one place where, if people want to support an Australian author, then there's a good opportunity to have eyes to look at your work. And if the story synopsis captures someone's heart or imagination, then they can grab it. But I'm curious, because you are obviously a web content manager and a marketer, and probably have a lot of experience. So with regards to marketing in general, is there anything interesting you've learned about the approach, the marketing approach? And has anything you've noticed changed, or anything for our listeners that you can, like a hot hint or a tip?
I've learnt a lot. It's been a huge learning curve. Being a marketer for someone else's product is easy, because you're not investing in it. You're investing your words and trying to sell that product for someone. Mm-hmm. But this is my own product, and I'm very close to it. So I had to learn to detach myself from that, and that's not easy. The other thing that was a little bit of a problem was good old COVID. My launch ended up being a quarter of the size of what it was meant to be. But it was a shame. Great. And I would recommend anyone who wants to write and has a book to launch it and get everyone you can possibly think of to come. I launched at a local bookshop, which was the best thing, because they had a room upstairs, and then everyone went about and bought my books as well as somebody else's books. So they were happy. And then, look, social media, it's a hit and miss. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and, I've got a few followers here and there, but I'm actually trialling the old-fashioned press release way.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
See if that works. Now, look, there's been a couple of things I've done that haven't worked, and I will never try again, because there are a lot of people, if you put in how to market your book on Google, there are 1,000,001 people trying to take your money.
Oh, you might as well type in how to make a sandwich. You know?
Unbelievable. But there are
yeah.
a couple of people that helped me along the way. You know, there's some review sites that were very, very good. But, you know, honestly, it's one of the hardest things to do. Writing a book is easy compared to trying to market it.
To a certain degree, I think there's merit to that, and there's an element of truth. You know, ultimately, for me, when I think about marketing, and again, like I'm learning every day, and you know, I hope to learn a whole heap more this year, because rather than just try and market my book, I want to market this website, which is a even bigger venture.
Yeah.
And then all the books in the website get the benefit of the marketing, which is really what I really want to happen. But ultimately, the one thing that I'm sort of conscious of at all times when I'm marketing or even thinking about marketing is nobody can read the book if they don't know about the book.
Mm.
And I think that is the most simple premise to begin, like your launching pad. So how is someone going to buy the book? Well, they have to know about the book. Okay. How do they know about the book? All right, what sort of audience do you want? How do you let them know about the book? And it could be any product really, but in this instance, let's talk books. No one could buy it if they don't know about it. And that's why I think, you know, hopefully I can learn, or myself and Veronica and working with the website and with the podcast. And that's our number one goal for 2021, is to reach so many people, so that if those people out there, including you all, dear listeners, are looking for another book to read, you know, or looking to try something different, or, you know, thinking about exploring different genres, whatever, or even buying a book for a present, whatever, then take a look at the website, and you've got some beautiful authors there, and you can support local talent, you know, some Australian Indigenous talent. And so that's the goal. So how do I reach everybody out there? Well, that's the trick, isn't it? And so we're going to be trying everything. But, well, I think obviously the most important part really is you can't sell a person a book if you haven't written the book. So you've definitely, you know, that's the hard part, I think, is writing the book. And then you've done that. The other part is trial and error. You know, marketing sometimes it might be 12 months of learning and making mistakes before you find something that works, you know. So for example, right now, when this podcast goes live, who knows how many people are going to hear the cool stories about, you know, your days as a deli and science fiction and, you know, the mysterious crime stories set in a room full of vintage camera stuff and film. And there's going to be a lot of listeners out there that will be very intrigued and will have a look for your stories. And if you are, I can definitely just quickly let you know that the decisions they made you can find under historical fiction, and I do believe Aussie Tales on the Australian Book Lovers website. And we've also going to be able to find Xenia Station underneath our science fiction listing. So definitely jump on and have a look, because I think there's some fantastic tales to be discovered there. And Maria, it has been so fun talking to you, and I really hope we have the chance to do it again. It's been a beautiful thing, because talking about, you know, the post-World War II and stuff has brought back some beautiful memories of my grandmother, which I didn't expect to be thinking of today. So that's just made my Friday awesome, being the Friday that we're recording this. You've brought back some really awesome memories of delis and being a kid in the shop and all the different smells, sights and sounds in the deli. So that's fantastic. And you've made me, talking about Star Wars, I might whip out the Empire Strikes Back again tonight and pop it on the big screen just for fun. But no, thank you so much. But before we let you go, have you got any inspiring words of wisdom, anything you'd like to let your listeners know about what inspired you to write, or for anybody who out there who is about to write, is going to write, or just what sort of magic you're hoping that everyone will have this year, 2021?
Okay, well, Darren, thank you so much. This has been lovely, and going down all those tracks of different stories, and it's lovely. It's been lovely.
That's the beauty of someone like yourself crossing so many genres.
Yeah, we certainly covered a lot of topics. Look, for anyone out there who is an aspiring writer or is thinking about it, just do it. It's going to come out whether you like it or not. Look, there's always the imposter syndrome. People are going to think, oh, I'm useless at this. Who's going to care? No one knows me. just let those things pass. You know, be whatever it is you need to be, and don't second guess yourself. If you want to be a writer, then go out and do it.
And you raised a really good point, that imposter situation. I think I suffer from it in many aspects of my life, and to this day. And I don't think it's something that's given enough attention, because obviously it comes down to, I don't think it's a confidence thing. I really think it's something different, but you're absolutely right. Don't feel that if you are looking or thinking about tackling a story, whether it be a short story, whether it be a biography or a novel or the next big, sci-fi epic, whatever it might be, or a good horror, like you said, just do it, because there's no secret club that is going to say, no, you're not welcome here. As far as being a writer, you're a writer when you write, and there are no rules. I mean, obviously there are fundamental grammatical rules, but as far as whatever inspires you to write, the story you want to write, and the approach, the style and the genre, anything, they're up to you. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Don't feel that you don't belong, or that you're not worthy to be a writer, or anything. Any of those negative thoughts, forget about them. Just write, because and worry about the sales, marketing, and all that. That's down the track. Just have fun, because I can. One thing I can promise: if you are tackling or about to tackle a story, or thinking about writing, and maybe looking for something to sort of spark that push, that drive, I can guarantee you that there's like a little switch that happens when you start writing, and when the characters begin to take on, a life of their own. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but when it happens, you'll know it. And they really do. And then the story becomes this huge garden in your imagination, which literally requires tending every day until you've completed the story. So, don't worry about finding the drive to keep going. Once you start that story and it grows and sprouts and begins reaching up for that beautiful sky in your mind, you will be along for the ride, essentially. So do it, absolutely. But so I'm glad you brought up that imposter thing, and I think that's something everybody should, if you feel that, just symbolically grab it by your hand, twist it into a good old paper ball, and throw it in the bin in the corner.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, Maria, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. So now we will put obviously in our show notes, we're going to put links to your website and to all areas where you can find her book, and also all the reviews, because you've got some fantastic reviews for your the decisions they made and some of the other short stories. So definitely check out the link there and have a look at some of the reviews, because they will inspire you to have a look and purchase that book. And so Maria, all the very best for the year ahead, for your upcoming releases. And I do hope, in fact, I'm triple hoping that we'll have a chat again when one of you get another release out, and we can continue this conversation and discuss how things are going from there.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Darren.
Excellent. And I hope you've got some really good umbrellas. I know you're about to get hit with the rain in New South Wales, but the sun will come out at some point, and I'm jealous because you'll be so lush and green there. It will be incredible. But for now, you might be a little bit underwater and soggy for a couple of days.
It's lovely. The garden is loving all this, so we can't complain.
No, yeah. We've got some epic weather here in South Australia, so we're not getting the rain. So, dear listeners, today I will be going, there's no surf, so I'm going to jump in my kayak and paddle straight out to sea and hope there's no big sharks out there. And that's where I do some of my thinking, so I can, or planning for the website, because we've got some great features coming up, and obviously for my story as well. So if there's no further podcast, there is a great white out there, and it got the better of me, but otherwise we'll see you on the next podcast. But Maria, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you take care. We'll see everybody again soon. Take care.
So what a brilliant conversation you had with Maria. So many different things that you covered. So the migrant stories, real stories, the value of an afternoon snooze. I do like that.
Oh, yes.
Yep. And I'm not going to make any ageist comments about, being alive and knowing the change from black and white to colour TV, as I was also around for the change from pounds, shillings and pence to dollars and cents. So yes, we'll just move on with that one. And for me, also, what I took from Maria's words and your conversation was the importance of families, and the fact that, you know, that it is, you know, as you were saying before the chat, a melting pot. Families are the same, aren't they? They're
Yes.
so eclectic. Every family, even, you know, the children that all come from the same genes. No, each incredibly unique individual. So yeah, that was great. And what really an articulate and clever, creative person to have multi-generational World War II and sci-fi and contemporary fiction. So just turns her hand to anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's probably just the beginning too.
Yeah, yeah.
But after re-listening to the interview, and it's actually, I've been thinking about it over the last couple of days, and it's kind of been something that has been in the back of my mind for a while, because, you know, yes, we're a country of migration, so that's for sure. But then, you know, there's often, obviously, or sorry, should I say, there's often discussion sometimes about, you know, racism and, you know, how it still it has a bit of a simmering undertone, not all across Australia, but it is still there somewhere. And then I see articles about appropriating other people's cultures and all this sort of stuff. So all the issues that arise when we talk about different cultures, so to speak, or different countries. And I was thinking, okay, let's, as a thought experiment, what if Australia embarked upon the concept of we are all human beings, as in, you know, we don't have, you know, we are human beings. We now identify as human beings. Therefore, we will create a unified language that will become the human language, and then we will all be human. Now, and let's say we expanded that to the globe. So let's say we one day, the consensus was, or the majority of the globe said, you know what, we want to now identify as human beings. We don't want to be identified as the piece of land that we happen to be born in. We are born on the planet Earth, and we're going to create a global language, as in a unified one language, a brand new one, and then eventually all the other languages will dissipate. There will be a lot of concern at that, because a lot of people say, well, we'll lose so much if we lose this language, if we lose that language, and we will lose so much if we lose this, not ritual, but, you know, this element of the country society, or the way they celebrate this, or, you know, certain aspects of a culture that is unique to that culture. Okay, and which I agree. I'd hate to see all these beautiful languages disappear, and cultures and all.
And
all
also
those.
the connection to country. I think that is incredibly important, and we hear more and more how important that is from our own First Nations peoples about, you know, I was reading something even just this morning about how they live with the country, whereas the European colonisers lived on the country or from the country. They kind of, you know, took and put stuff on it, whereas the, you know, Indigenous people who'd been around for 60,000 years lived with the country. Yeah, they cultivated and they farmed and they did those kind of things, but they worked with the country. And I also read something about that's even the naming and the understanding and connection to country is very much a First Nations thing, because those people have often, you know, been the first people on that land, and a lot of First Nations will describe themselves as coming from a particular valley or waterway or mountain range or something. So it's, yeah, it would be hard to find and because the words, I think sometimes English is the most brutal language, because it takes us 6 different words to describe what in another language is the soft rain falling after a hot day, whereas we have to say, well, it's not heavy rain, it's kind of soft rain, it's this and this, but yes, it's the particular, you know, the petrichor smell. And so yeah, I think that's a big ask to get a single language.
But the thought experiment I was having was, okay, going on one extreme, which is the global new language, global identity, is going to come at the detriment of existing cultures. But then at the moment, with existing cultures, we have constant racism, war, and unsettling aspects across the globe. That's just the facts. So here in Australia, we're such a such a melting pot of so many different wonderful cultures and backgrounds and experiences, and we have people from all around the globe. What point? I mean, it's one thing to say as an Australian we are multicultural, but at what point does somebody feel that identity is being, so you're talking about your relationship to country is important. So for example, let's take, I'm just going to throw a dart on the map. South Korea, for example. At what point does South Korea, if multi cultures started heading there, at what point is it right to say stop? Otherwise, we will have the potential of losing South Korea. And should that word stop be brought into it, as far as what makes South Korea South Korea? And if there is a point where we say stop, who measures that? And then we've got that conundrum of, or is that being racist? Or do you see? It's such and I'm not sure the answer to it. But so if a society or a culture wants to, if they want to protect what we in general say is important about a culture or society, at what point can they say that?
Yeah, I think that you've got to look at a lot more history, and you've got to look at a lot more of the globalism, because if you, and I can't speak from an Indigenous perspective, but just look at the cultures that the Europeans have destroyed here in Australia. So how can we claim Australian culture when really we're a colonising culture? And yes, the migrant melting pot that's brought people from all over the world in the diaspora of almost every nation have come here, but it's Australian, but it's post-invasion Australian. So I think that if you look at history, but go back to history and think about the Egyptians and the Romans and the Phoenicians and the Persians and all of those kind of things, their nations have changed, and there are, and that is the reason for wars. There's, pockets of Indigenous cultures in all places all around the globe. But I don't know that I'd want to necessarily lose that diversity, but I am certainly open to, bringing more things in, because, I think of what migrants have brought into my life in terms of food and culture and reading and arts and those kind of things. So, yeah, I think that's a really big conversation.
Yeah, I know. But it seems like the easy answer is let's just become global. Let's become identify as human beings, and then we can say, we are a vicious animal. Let's just be honest. The whole history of the world is a war and invasion and conquering. That's it.
Except for 60,000 years in Australia. So that's the point of difference. So there weren't great wars. They managed to live without having, all those wars. They had small battles and those kind of things.
So they had battles, and as far as if you were to match the scale for scale.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I think they were able to trade and find common language and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's tricky. I've read a lot of science fiction where their globalization has kind of taken place, where there becomes one language and that kind of thing. But I've never really read one where it particularly works. So maybe that's coming from our own.
No, and again,
we don't believe we're one until we're picked on by an alien race who go, oh, you're all the same, so you're a bit of a different colour, whatever. Get over yourselves. And then we get together and go, oh, well, now we're going to, fight off the other aliens. So, yeah.
Because if I say to you, where are you born? You say Australia, and I'll say, well, okay, what defines you as an Australian? Then what defines you as an Australian? And is that shifting? And is there elements of what we define ourselves as Australians that needs, that has to be preserved? Not all of it, but some of it. Or is it okay? And I'm not saying bring in relation to migration. I'm just in relation to internet and adopting other society approaches, and like you said, art and all sorts. It's a tricky one, and I'm wondering, are we by default heading towards a global, even though it seems like we're separated, but that's governments. But as far as people, living in this new cyber future, where anyone can be on you don't know where anybody is when you're communicating with them unless they tell you. So ideas are spreading. Yes, it's
Look, I think there will. I think there will. And in 100 years, we'll look back and it'll be different. In 200, in 1,000, it will be, because Australia is changing, and I like the way Australia is changing. I don't want us to be the White Australia policy. I don't want us to be a racist country. I want to be living in harmony with everybody that comes in. So call me naive, but I think we can do it.
Well, I'm on your team, absolutely. But talking about the war stuff with Maria and that idea of our nation being one, it is a nation of migration, and it's such a beautiful melting pot, of so much different cultures. But look, we've only got a handful of cities, as in capital cities. I can see no hurry from our nation in developing any more cities. We're not bringing. We've got all this land, and it's heartbreaking sometimes when I drive. Do your 6-hour drive, your 8-hour drive, 12-hour drive, or 3-day drive when you go to Queensland. Just driving past all empty land. When I say empty, yes, there's a lot of farming land and stuff, but as far as just the expanse of the country, and when people want to come here that aren't able to just follow the normal rules because they're coming from perhaps a war-torn country or from severe hardship, the best we can do is put them on a cage on an island somewhere. It's just mind-boggling. How are we moving forward as a country? In 50 years, 100 years, we're still not going to have another city, which makes us probably the slowest country on the planet, really. And so at what point do we not have to stand up and say, hey, what are we doing? But nonetheless, these are the things that came, as
to your mind,
about. Yeah.
What also came to my mind was the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which was developed in 2017. So, the Indigenous leaders from all over Australia gathered at a national constitution, and they made the statement, which I think is really important. So I think we've got time to read it. We're not going to.
And it was rejected by the federal government, wasn't it?
They didn't take any action from it, which is just pathetic on their point. So I am going to read it. So here we go. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion, the ancestral tie between the land, or Mother Nature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom, remain attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished, and coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise? That peoples possessed a land for 60 millennia, and this sacred link disappears from world history in merely the last 200 years. With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionally, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are aliened from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them, and our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. They will walk in two worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future.
Touché.
Touché. So that is the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and you can hear it ulurustatement.org /the-statement, and you can hear Professor Megan Davis, who was from the referendum cancelled. But yeah, federal government did not take that bloody fantastic opportunity to go, yes, this is a step forward. So we're still working on getting that into the Constitution. And I think what I loved about it, and one of the reasons I wanted to read is you mentioned then about, the culture and those kind of things, and the words that children will walk in two worlds and their culture will be a gift to their country. And I think that, is absolutely the way that the future for me looks. So in 100 years, in, a millennia, when we've been around 1,000 years, who knows what it will be like.
Yeah, and I guess coming full circle, and that's the kind of strange, abstract notion I was trying to wrestle with in my head, and that is what, moving forward, what is going to achieve a better result? And again, abstract, just thought experiment, because obviously reality is a little bit different, but do we come together as one species, the human beings, or do we stay divided? If we stay divided as far as maintain a distinct separation between culture and government and histories, then how's that gone for us so far? Not very well. So it does keep me up at night, because I'm thinking, well, is it a riddle that we're living in that has no answer, or is there an answer to be found somewhere? And if so, what sort of conversations do we need to be having as a country and as a globe? And are we having those conversations? I mean, are we focusing our efforts and our emotions, perhaps? And I'm just questioning, I have no idea, but is it possible we're focusing our emotions and our questions and our energy to the wrong part, to the wrong areas that need resolution, that need thorough investigation and movement forward? I don't know. So, but yes, this is the power of talking stories and histories and families and cultures and writing.
Yeah, it does make you think about connection to, to ancestors and those kind of things. But it's also, brings you back to one of my favourite quotes. And this is not in my quote, by the way. No, come on. No, you got to let me have this one.
Yeah, of course.
Because this is, the words are sacred. They deserve respect. And if you get the right ones in the right order, they can nudge the world a little. So that's, I've said that one before, and it's on the desktop of my computer. And I think that, you read things like, for me, the Uluru Statement from the Heart, I was just like, yes, come on, those such powerful words. And, you and Maria talking about, the connections to family and the things, so many families, and what humans do to each other. And I think, no. So anyway, let's switch it up from what humans do to each other.
You said the magic word, quotes.
Exactly. So I'm going to go with Stephen Covey today, who every time I see a picture of him, he's usually got this huge smile on his face. Stephen is he's an American author who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and, many other things along that kind of personal development line. But a quote of his that I really enjoy is, we have 4 primary needs: to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of wraps up for me a lot of what we've been talking about, because, to live, absolutely. To love brings that richness. To learn, for me, is just the way I breathe, and to leave a legacy. So to leave each conversation that I have with people, hopefully leave them a bit more inspired, or a bit more optimistic, or a bit more thoughtful, or a bit more challenged, so that, leave them a legacy, not just something that, for me, a legacy is, something that you leave that you don't necessarily see the results of. And I think
that's
you're saying some of those conversations, we're not going to see them, but maybe children's might start to see those things. Yeah,
and I think for me, my idea of legacy is, doing what you can in life, like I said, to learn to love, and by utilising the lessons and the mistakes that you make, pursuing, learning and loving and living, hopefully one is in a position to reveal more of the world that was more of the world than was prior to them living, and therefore, or reveal more of the trail to be followed, or reveal more ways of understanding, so that the legacy that's left behind is actually a tool for people to strive forward in much faster ways, so that they can then illuminate the future for those behind them as well. So I guess, for me, legacy is similar to offering a shoulder for, the old theory of standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so without legacy being left, then it's a long, hard slog. But I'd like to think in science as a legacy, you develop something, and then that somebody can compound on that once you're gone. But yeah, I like that. Yeah, to live and to love.
Good. What have you got for me?
Well, I've got two. So one is still a little bit more serious, and then the other one's a bit of fun. So the first one is, based on that little rabbit hole of thoughts that I went down. And this is a quote by Nadia Hashimi.
Yep.
And it reads, "Refugees didn't just escape a place. They had to escape 1,000 memories until they'd put enough time and distance between them and their misery to wake to a better day." Yeah, so I like that. It's it's too easy to think, where did they come from? Where did they escape from? As if that sort of defines the reason, when it doesn't. But anyway, yes. So what is your next quote?
So this is one which is a sign just as an Australian Aboriginal saying. So there's not a particular person, but it's one that I've seen in a few places and one that I really like. It's on death. "We are all visitors to this time, this place. We are just passing through. Our purpose here is to observe, to learn, to grow, to love, and then we return home."
Love that one.
How about that? Isn't
Yeah.
that fantastic?
Absolutely.
And it kind of, brings it back to a cosmic level for me. You're talking about, the globalization of language and culture and people, and then we're just visiting. We're pretty transitory when you think about it. Even when you think about it in terms of, this planet and maybe even the 60,000 years of Australians being on this continent, if I'm lucky, I'll live to 110, so that's transitory and I'm passing through. So my purpose
that's interesting,
is to observe, learn, grow, love, and then I'm off home, wherever that might be in your mind.
So that's interesting because that makes me think, well, if there's one distinct lesson we can take straight away from that, and that is when we're living, treat this place like the guest that we are.
Yes.
We're a guest.
Yes.
In which case...
Don't trash it. Stop trashing it.
Yes, we're a guest here where it's not ours. And in which case, then it comes back full circle again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If we're just visitors, then we aren't defined by the land that we happen to emerge because we're visiting this globe.
Yep.
So do we become globalists? I don't know. No.
All right, we've been down that rabbit hole. Give me a second quote. Come on.
No, I've got a good. So, obviously talking with Maria for the interview, and she had that really cool idea of coming up with different ways of describing the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the ocean, I love the beach. So here's a quote. Now this is actually from author unknown, which I love a good little mystery. And now this one, hopefully it comes through with the puns, I suppose. Hopefully the audio works just as well as the words. I'm sure it will. So the quote is, "Advice from the ocean. Be sure to yourself. Come out of your shell. Take time to relax and coast. Avoid peer pressure. See life's beauty. Don't get tied down. Make waves." I thought that's cool.
That's really cool. Very clever.
Yeah, so make waves. You can think crazy thoughts. Don't get tied down. Yes. Remember, you're a guest. Enjoy the visit. Your ticket's only for one session.
Very good. Very good. I like that.
Groovy.
All
well,
right.
That
so
is episode
that's our
21.
quotes.
Yes.
Yes. And episode 21, all done. So all that remains to be seen, but not all, of course, because we'll have a fabulous book review after this, and a reading. I think Maria's got a reading for us, hasn't she?
Oh, she does indeed. So that's going to be a fantastic little fun part to end the show with. So absolutely, listeners, please stay tuned for Maria's reading, which is going to be awesome. And then definitely a book review or two. We'll see what surprises we can pop in there. Yep. But again, thank you to everyone for joining us for episode 21. Got a bit serious there because we are adults now, 21. We're supposed to sit here and philosophize about how we would fix the world because, of course, at 21, we have all the answers.
Yeah, well, if we fixed the world, if it was up to me, there'd be a hell of a lot more compassion and a way lot more love, a lot less violence. So there you go.
Yes. And look, my little philosophy and I think I carry this from 21, and I've been trying to talk myself out of it, but nothing has given me the evidence to do it. There is a sense of futility out there. We don't make it out of here alive, as Jim Morrison said. And, there is futility in the sense of stuff's going to happen beyond our control.
Mm-hmm.
Live, love, and learn is the only thing we can do to combat it. And that is, our immediate surroundings, because, there's a beautiful community to discover just outside most of our doors.
Yes.
And, it's a beautiful thing to, talk books, talk ideas, talk politics, whatever it might be, but just to enjoy company in people that live in your world, for even if it's just once in a blue moon, because, they're looking out on the whole globe and trying to absorb all the information of what's happening. It's pretty daunting and it's pretty scary. But then you open the door and you hear beautiful songs of magpies, and you can hear the surf rolling, and everything's okay. So, the futility is there, but it shouldn't have to be a concern.
No,
that's my theory, 21-year-old theory.
Optimism is out there to combat all of that. Okay, so we need to say take care for now, and remember to read more Aussie books.
Getting there. I think starting next podcast, we might even try some different music backgrounds.
Oh.
We can try cinematic announcements. We can try Harvey Norman advertisement announcements.
No. Don't
Styles,
mention. Yeah, no, definitely don't mention him.
No, as in, on sale now, don't miss out. But no, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for being part of episode number 21. So many more interviews to come, so much more adventure and entertainment to enjoy. But please do stay tuned. We've got a wonderful reading coming right next, as well as some book reviews. But otherwise, take care, everybody.
Bye for now.
The Decision They Made by Maria P Frino. Chapter 6. Amelia, 1980. Cuddled together, the bombs are almost insignificant while she is in his arms. With Vladimir, she feels safe. No other man in her life treats her like he does. With kindness, respect, and a real love. A love that permeates her whole body. Darling, wake up! She hears another voice in the distance. Is that William's voice? Suddenly, a hand is on her arm, shaking her awake. Amelia, you're dreaming. Wake up. You were throwing your arms around yourself in your sleep. Was it a nightmare? What? Oh, she yawns. Yes, William. I guess it was. Sorry I woke you. No need to apologise. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Oh, it was just a dream, she assures him. I won't bore you with details I can't really remember. Her aching muscles scream to be stretched. With her arms and legs splayed at full stretch, she says, What I will do now that I'm awake is have a cup of tea. Would you like one? She does more cat-like stretches, waking up her limbs before placing her legs on the floor. Thanks anyway, it's too early. I'll stay in bed a little longer. Just as long as you're okay. The clock blinks 5 a.m. as she places her robe, then bends down, kissing him. I'm fine, thanks, darling. She isn't fine, but she does not want to concern him. This is something she has to deal with on her own. Before heading to the kitchen, she walks into their bathroom. Splashing her face, she stares into the mirror. Why now? Why is she remembering it all now? Her mind keeps going back to the worst time of her life. A time William was never a part of, a time she does not want him to know about. Turning away from the mirror, she walks towards the kitchen. The kettle whistles as she places last night's dishes back where they belong. Outside, the dawn light is beginning to oust the night. She yawns again, making her tea, then ambles out towards the deck. Making herself comfortable, her thoughts return to the past. They have been down in the basement all day, staying in each other's arms even after the bombs stop. As if they have no care in the world. You had better get back, your father will worry. She gazes into his caring eyes. They are much brighter now, not hollowed shells as they were when she first lay eyes on him. I know, she sighs. All I want is to stay here on this blanket with you, but I have other responsibilities. How much damage do you think is up there? Not too much in this area. The bombs sounded a long way off. I am uneasy about the future, though. There will be a time when they will hit Naples. For now, we are safe. With all this danger around us, don't you fear for your life during your missions? His top lip lifts in a slight smirk. I try not to think about it. We all do what needs to be done. My comrades follow my orders, and my orders come from the top brass. We will follow orders until such time as the partisans have enough power. We are rallying support. There are many more pacifists like us. We will prevail. What we need are leaders who are pacifists, she says, as she raises her head from the comfort of his chest. Stretching her arms upwards, she hits the shelf. Dust unravels its way down on top of them. Oh, darn. Sorry, I do forget how little room we have down here. I'm not complaining, Amelia. This basement keeps me safe and hidden. Without your help, I would probably be dead by now. She kisses his forehead, ignoring his mention of death. There is too much of her around them. I will bring him some food after dark. Only if it is safe. In fact, it might be best to wait until morning. Troops will be scouring around after the bombings. She pulls him towards her, kissing him passionately before leaving the basement. Her beautiful Soviet lover, a man who takes up twice the space she does, is not easy to keep hidden. She has only managed to do so because she is the only one with a key. There is no reason for anyone else to come into this basement. Once outside, she scans the lane. Fear keeps everyone indoors. Vladimir had been right. The bombs were further away again. She also wonders how long before they hit this area of Naples. This war. There had been talk for years. No one believed it would happen, but it has. At a brisk pace, she returns to her apartment. All quiet. Teodoro, her father, is not home yet. Her breath filters through her body again. She doesn't even realise how often she holds it in. Busying herself with preparing what little food they have left, she hopes this war will end soon. Food is already scarce, and the news reports don't give people hope. Taking out the wilted endive, 1 tomato and an onion, she decides to make a stew with the chicken bones left from the chicken Teodoro had somehow acquired. She does not ask how. In fact, she rarely speaks to her father because when he is around, he is the one who does all the talking. Sober or drunk, he is the master. Simona and Marco, her sister and brother-in-law, will arrive soon. If Teodoro is not drunk when he arrives home, it might be a decent evening. Even Marco will not confront him when he is drunk. Instead, he and Simona leave for the safety of their own apartment. This is when Amelia has to deal with the abuse on her own. Looks like it might be another warm day. Are you feeling better? Asked William, placing a kiss on her head. She had not heard him walk onto the deck. I'm fine, I told you that earlier, she answers, patting the spot next to her on the swing lounge. They sit together, peering out over the Pacific Ocean, watching the honey colours of the sunrise. Amelia is grateful for the life she has now. William is her husband.
The Starthorn Tree, The Starken Crown, Book 1, by Kate Forsyth. Everything a fantasy needs is within these pages. Wonderful world building, quirky characters, a unique magic system, and an epic journey. And of course, a slew of villains, twists and turns in the plot to keep you guessing. It was soothing and satisfying to read this children's fantasy and watch the dramas unfold for the cast as they made their way through their perilous journey, learning about their world and themselves along the way. Forsyth has delivered another great story.
Let's meet again. Where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.